Hello from the Freedom of Information and Privacy Association. I'm Patrick Farnsworth. Today, FIPA President Mike Larsen reflects on the Alberta elector data breach. In this commentary, he considers that when political parties are left outside meaningful privacy rules, sensitive democratic data can be collected, shared, and exposed without proper accountability. Mike connects the Alberta breach to federal developments in Ottawa, including Bill C-25 and the earlier Bill C-4 changes. And he asks a direct question. Should political parties be trusted to regulate themselves when handling Canadians' personal information?
Violation of the privacy rights of millions of members of the Alberta electorate is, in part, a consequence of deliberate decisions made by government to exclude political parties from meaningful privacy laws. This issue is not confined to Alberta, and while the actors at the center of the egregious and harmful data breach are right-wing separatists, the failure to protect the political privacy of Canadians transcends partisan divisions. This failure is not a matter of accident or omission, but a matter of policy that emerges from the confluence of two positions. First, the recognition that the collection and use of personal information is indispensable for political parties and affiliated movement organizers seeking to gain or retain power. Elections databases are an integral foundation for these efforts, but modern political campaigns make use of a wide array of data brokers, apps, and algorithms to connect with target audiences. Engagement in our data-intensive endeavors and advances in artificial intelligence have the potential to bridge the gap between macro-level campaigns and micro-targeted influence. The second position is the belief that political parties should not be subject to the rules that govern the collection, use, or disclosure of personal information by public bodies or commercial organizations. Instead, they should be trusted to develop and follow their own privacy policies, loose frameworks set out in elections laws, and beyond the remit of independent commissioners with investigative or enforcement powers. Now, taken together and enacted in law and policy, these positions create a recipe for the violation of privacy rights. Alberta provides an illustration of the potential consequences, but the latest legislative attack on political privacy is currently in quiet folding in Ottawa. This week, the House of Commons Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs has been discussing Bill C-25, the Strong and Free Elections Act, which was introduced on March 26th. And C-25 comes on the heels of Bill C-4, an act respecting certain affordability measures for Canadians, and another measure, which passed earlier this year. That bill retroacted federal political parties from any provincial privacy laws and made them responsible for developing and administering their own in-house privacy policies. This was a direct effort to short-circuit an ongoing court case that concerns the application of BC's Personal Information Protection Act to federal parties. The bill also ensured that people in Canada have no legal right to request access to their own personal information held by federal political parties, and that Canada's Privacy Commissioner has no authority to investigate parties' handling of personal information. This regime is similar to the situation in Alberta, where the Information Protection Act does not apply to political parties, as the Commissioner noted in the wake of the data breach scandal. Now, it's important to note that C-4 was supported by the federal Liberals, Conservatives, and NDP, and that it passed despite things expressed by the Senate Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee that reviewed it. The lack of partisan opposition, coupled with the embedding of the privacy provisions within what is ostensibly a finance bill, meant that C-4's revisions received minimal attention from the media. The bill was initially reviewed by the committee, as opposed to the House Standing Committee on Ethics, Access to Information, and Privacy, which would normally consider bills related to privacy. Despite this, a parade of civil society organizations appeared before the committee and submitted briefs that raised alarms about C-4's erosion of political privacy rights. Representatives of federal political parties also appeared before the House and Senate committees, where they downplayed these concerns as alarmist and noted that the complete absence of meaningful privacy rules in C-4 did not preclude them from such measures being added at a future date. The official summary of the Strong and Free Elections Act, C-25, indicates that the bill will amend the Elections Act to, among other things, provide for new requirements relating to political parties' policies for protection of personal information. Sounds good. But in practice, however, the amendments hold federal political parties to standards far lower than those associated with public bodies or businesses. C-25 requires a political party to protect the personal information that's under its control through physical, organizational, and technological security safeguards, with a level of protection proportionate to the sensitivity of the personal information. But it doesn't set out any enforceable minimum standards or make reference to the internationally recognized privacy principles associated with Canada's Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, or PIPEDA, or the Privacy Act. In contrast with federal and provincial privacy laws, C-25 also sets no limits on the collection, use, disclosure, and retention of personal information. It doesn't require that individuals consent to the collection of their personal information, and it retains C-4's lack of independent oversight. The House of Commons completed its second reading of C-25 on April 24th, at which time the bill was referred to the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs for study. And that committee scheduled meetings on May 5th and on May 7th. But it made no effort to inform or invite submissions from any of the independent or civil society witnesses who appeared in relation to C4 and left a window of 24 hours, ending Friday, May 1st, for the submission of written briefs. And despite the ridiculously short window of opportunity, a coordinated push from a number of groups meant that a half dozen or more written briefs were quickly drafted and filed, and a number of representatives requested to appear as witnesses. Now, it remains to be seen whether the committee members will have the time to consider the submitted briefs and if additional witnesses will be called. So what now? The way that political parties collect, use, and disclose, or as the case may be, over-collect, misuse, and distribute for partisan purposes, personal information is fundamentally connected to the functioning of our democratic processes. As a general rule, the strength of privacy protections and the guardrails around the handling of personal information should scale up according to the sensitivity of the data in question. And this means that we should have every right to demand clear, strong, and enforceable rules governing the handling of data that is directly related to democratic participation. And this means that the two positions outlined above, a reminder, the recognition that personal information is indispensable for political parties, and second, the belief that political parties should be held to a different and lesser standard in the handling of this information, these principles are incompatible with participatory democracy. If political parties wish to engage in datafied campaigning, which they do, they must be forced to adhere to strong privacy laws. It is difficult to find people who disagree with this position, save for politicians and political party officials who directly benefit from a light-touch privacy regime. And indeed, recent polling by Ipsos shows that Canadians overwhelmingly support strong privacy protections for federal political parties. If we want to avoid a repetition of the Alberta data breach and prevent the mishandling of personal information by political parties, provincial or federal, we need to push for law reform. Bad structures empower bad actors, and we're currently witnessing the entrenchment of a bad structure via C-25. And it doesn't have to be this way. There's perfectly reasonable proposals that would bring political parties under the auspices of the laws that govern private sector organizations and nonprofit societies. Provincial and federal information and privacy commissioners have repeatedly called for this sort of framework, as have civil society groups. In BC, provincial privacy laws already apply to political parties. So there's opportunities to take action. At the federal level, Canadians can sign and share House of Commons Petition E7237. It's initiated by the BC Freedom of Information and Privacy Association, sponsored by Green Party leader Elizabeth May. The petition calls upon the House of Commons to oppose or repeal any changes to the Canada Elections Act during the 45th Parliament that have the effect of exempting political parties from privacy obligations that are or were subject to, and to impose enforceable privacy obligations equivalent to widely accepted Canadian fair information principles, including meaningful rights of access and independent oversight prior to the next federal general election. A coalition of civil society organizations, FIPA, Open Media, Canadian Civil Liberties Association, supported by the Centre for Digital Rights, have launched a coordinated effort to promote this petition and to support it with research and background material. Information about all of this can be found in the notes. Provincially and federally, people could also contact their elected representatives and ask them where they stand on the matter of political privacy. And when doing so, it's important not to accept appeals to policy and rhetorical commitments to ideals. No, the question is simple. Do they believe that personal information protection laws should apply to political parties? It's a yes or no. Contact members of Parliament and ask them to amend C-25 to address the embedded political privacy gaps. So through these efforts, through engagements, through information sharing, through raising awareness, it is possible to push back on the growing eclipse of any coverage of political parties in Canada from meaningful privacy protections. And I think the Alberta situation really highlights the importance of doing so and the consequences of failing to act. Thanks.
Access and Privacy Online reviews the headlines and delivers deeper commentary on a regular basis. Be sure to subscribe to get the full episodes every week and get notifications when we release show segments and other commentary throughout the week. We look forward to hearing from you soon. Have a good one.